You're live. Going live. You're live. Okay. Sorry for the lag every time now. Excuse me. It was easier when I used to upload the videos, but now I have to wait and see if we're in focus and all those kind of things. But I didn't necessarily need to rush out this video, but I'll do it anyway. I guess I'll start. Well, I want to kind of rewind. I had started to do the ratings, and I didn't want to fill in the last gaps, even though I pretty much already knew what they were going to be. So if you watched the previous video, you cut to the chase. I haven't changed the rankings from where I thought they would be. Okay, but we can still reasonably assume that the people who make this kilt might be the same people who make those other kilts that I returned. Don't know. I want to read the information specific to this brand from the Amazon site, and they do have a web store, but then when you go to click on the product, it just directs you back to Amazon. I don't know that they all do that. But it's H Highland Redstone on Amazon for some reason. That extra H is just a mistake, I think. And that claims it's a polyviscose 8-yard traditional men's Scottish national tartan kilt. I'm combining some of the things from the one site to the other just to save time. In the Amazon column, it says it is machine washable. It has a belted closure, which is more accurate than the last kilt that said it had a button closure when there's no buttons on any kilts ever, or not supposed to be on a traditional one anyway. Under origin, though, it just says imported, so that's kind of confusing. And yet it also says it's made by skilled Scottish artisans. So do they export the Scots to the imported country? I don't know how that works. But using traditional techniques for a timeless style that will never go out of fashion. Great way to show your Irish heritage and pride. Perfect for formal events, weddings, or Irish-themed occasions. Now, it's saying all that because I bought an Irish tartan one. I'm sure if you clicked on one of the other tartans, it might give you slightly different verbiage to the same effect. But then on the site, it says made with the utmost care and attention to detail to ensure high quality product. And I will add that it came with the flashes, even though I don't know if they make the flashes themselves or if they're subcontracted out from this other company, because I recognize this crumpled up cardboard as being the same flashes that I get from UT Kilts, which of course is one of the brands we're comparing this with. And UT Kilts, of course, not specifying with the flashes always, but was claiming that their tartans were 100% wool, but they had two different fabrics, this one and a different one, which is the one that is in a drawer somewhere. I couldn't get it out. Which is why I was in the description kind of implying that, you know, this is going to be not a one-to-one comparison of any of these kilts exactly the way that, you know, if you were really, really on the fence between should I buy this one or that one, we'll come close. We'll be able to, you know, we'll be able to get it within reason. Now, again, I was trying to match this tartan that I had bought, this very low quality acrylic kilt, in for a very high price. This new one was not quite half the price. It was because enough years have gone by. It was in like the $70 range, which is still less expensive than UT Kilts was charging for a similar product, but that might not be. But again, he was claiming as wool, might be a wool blend, don't know. I can't always tell just by feeling. I try to, you know, like I said, I try to get pretty close, you know, to try and help you make the best call. Now, I met a woman who says she can't wear any wool, so she would prefer this, but the tartan mills, the actual Scottish ones or whatever, or their people who make the kilts from their wool, maybe insist that you shouldn't have a problem if you're allergic to wool with that style of wool. But if you're not willing to risk it and you're only going to buy poly, viscose, or polyester or acrylic, then you're not going to care how much they insist that you can wear tartan worsted wool instead of woolen wool. I don't know. I'm not your doctor. I'm not your hypoallergenic specialist. I do know that, like, this acrylic that, with some of the Scottish Kilt Company fabric. Last time I just showed up the raw fabric. This is basically the same thing. In a tie, has a slightly different texture than this new kilt, and a very similar texture to the current UT kilts, but a little less nappy, maybe a little more finer of a finish. But they're not pretending this is wool. They're calling this acrylic. And again, I've had different versions of acrylic fabric from that company, so they're not 100% consistent. So again, even though I gave them a pretty good ranking overall, especially compared to the other acrylic brands, they're still kind of spotty. And so I've ranked this company now higher based on only a couple of factors, though, because I haven't ordered multiple kilts from them, where I've had multiple kilts and products from some of these other companies. So I have a better, broader sense of how they feel. So there's that. This, like, hat, for example, which I'm sure is 100% polyester, has a very nice fine finish to it, though, and is a not completely accurate representation of either of the two tartans it could be, though. It's a fashion hat, but it goes okay with, the outfits and whatnot. But I again, have a good feel for it, that it doesn't feel terrible. And it claims to be 40% wool and 60% polyester. So maybe it's more wool than I give it credit for. But again, it's not itchy or woolly feeling or anything, but it's not, again, it doesn't feel like wool, which is why, without looking at the tag, I assumed it was, more polyester than it claims to be. But 60% is still more than half, right? And then again, getting to the tartan, this is the one that's actually pictured in the thumbnail that I was drawn to, again, to try and kind of match with that hat. But the orange and the yellow are definitely two different colors, and this one has more white in it than the kilt we're looking at today, which is kind of in between. It's not totally orange, it's more gold, but it's not yellow, but it has the less white. So once again, we have not the exact same tartan we're looking for. And this kilt I brought in not really to compare the tartan colors or the fabric, but for some other aspects that we'll get into soon enough. So after talking about 6 other products or companies or something first, we're finally getting to this kilt, right? Okay. So we have the tag here, the Highland Redstone Professional Kilt Makers, and a UPC code or whatever you call that. And we had a label, a pretty big label here, which sits at the back of your right hip. So this might, I don't know, some of you might find this annoying. I had a kilt with something like this previously, and I never noticed it when I was wearing it. I didn't have any real itchy. You've got another half satin lining. It's doubled over, and it's a bit thicker than that other really terrible lining that I showed last week. But still not exactly, as high a quality as, there's your buttonhole, or as nice as the canvas cloth lining that we're getting. Now, again, here we're getting a kilt for, maybe close to $50 more, and maybe heavier weight fabric a little bit. Probably about the same amount of pleats though. Last week, I mean, I was literally doubling over guffaw with the idea that it was only 13 pleats. This time we have well over 20 pleats. We have close to 30 pleats here, so that's not terrible. Whether or not that's a full 8 yards, I don't know. It's not quite as heavy as the one I don't have now, but similar. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume it's still going to be closer to 6 yards than the full 8. If you actually pulled out all the stitches and measured it, you're probably not getting a full 8-yard kilt. And it still has the basting stitch in it, so I can't really show it off, but it also does have a hem, which, let's go to the apron. You can see it's hemmed all the way around, same as the UT kilts alternate model used to be before these fused edge ones replaced those. Okay. So a lot of times with the hem, the big drawback is, especially if they're hemmed too shallow, this one's not too bad, is that the fabric will bunch up a lot more and the pleats won't sit as flat as you would like. This one looks like the pleats are going to not be as nice as one of the old UT kilts that I have, but since we're hemming the fabric, we're automatically going to have that problem. So again, with the cheap acrylic kilts, we're also going to have hems. It's just for some reason the acrylic, well, not always. Some of the acrylic is fused like this and some of it's not. I've not had a problem too much with the pleats that have had the hems. Again, we're talking Scottish Kilt Company primarily. I think I have one or two from them that has a hem, and the hem hasn't really bothered me. But the construction across the back was not as well fitted in the hips or the waist, so that was a thing. So we have kind of a hem situation going up along this inner apron. And we have the one strap here. The straps are decent quality, it seems like, for what you're paying. They're not as thin and flimsy as some of the other ones. They're a bit maybe longer than might be completely necessary, but I'm going to talk about sizing in a minute, because that's where one of the big issues is they put this size 46, 48. What does that exactly mean? So I had originally ordered along with that other budget brand, because again, if they do their sizing the same way, it's probably the same parent company. So I automatically knew 42 wasn't going to be any good, and I skipped up here to 46, 48 instead of going to 44, 46, which might have fit slightly better, but I was worried that it also might be too small. So trying this on, what we see is that it's, we have this, might as well get it out of the way. Well, here's one locker loop. I don't know where the other one is. Some people find these annoying and just cut them right off. I'm not seeing a second one for some reason. And we have the two belt loops, if you want to call them belt loops. It's 4-in chain holders or belt loops, however you want to use. And like again, we have all the pleats and the tartan being, again, not quite orange, not quite yellow. Not going to match that hat very well, but it is what it is. So here we see that the belt and the loop are almost in the right place on me. So I might have to move this buckle because it's a little close to the buttonhole maybe, and not quite where we want it to be in terms of the holes. So I can put this on right now at the beginning of the day and it'd be fine. It'd be not too tight. But then by the end of the day, I think we would have a lot of this drooping and constantly wanting to pull it tighter going on. But if I got a smaller kilt, I think that the apron, as you can see, might be a little bit too short, depending on where it falls. So it's kind of right in that sweet spot. It's really hard for me to give you a recommendation on which size to get. with most clothes, you know, you always kind of say go bigger, you'll grow into them, and you can tighten your belt. And kilts, it's a little bit harder to kind of say that because it doesn't always work. But in this case, yes, I think the bigger size, and then just me paying $10 to get these buckles moved back this way will fix that a lot easier than ordering a whole nother kilt and waiting a whole nother week. I think the thing about these buckles, I guess they look kind of cool, but they are heavy. They're definitely different than any other kilt buckles I have seen. I'm not going to put the thing all the way on because I'm trying to do a video, you know. But so yeah, with the weight of the fabric, with the weight of these buckles, I'll probably replace those buckles altogether with something more like what's on this, even though these aren't very pretty buckles or anything. I don't know. I have to get them moved either way to make the kilt work. So I don't know what the tailor will have on hand that I will find useful, because I know the only extra buckles I have laying around here are very cheap ones that came off a kilt that disintegrated a long time ago. So I don't know how good they'll do holding up a heavier fabric garment like this. But then again, what's this really doing? It's just a stupid little spindle thingy. This is supposed to hold up all the weight, right? This tiny little thing in a notch and a strap. So your guess is as good as mine. But yeah, all this extra kind of stuff going on. I don't know. Maybe a stitch anchoring this down instead of letting this go on like this. I'm not sure. I don't trust my local tailor to understand these things, because I've tried to have conversations with her just as recently as this week about this kind of stuff, and that was practically an argument. And so I might have to go to a different person who has a better machine or something and see what they recommend, because she might shy away from anything that she thinks is too difficult or too time consuming, even though I know she can do this in about 10 minutes. Who knows? They're fickle. The fabric, like I said, is not as nice of a hand as some that I've felt, but it's definitely not the flimsiest acrylic either. The weave is, holding it up here where you can't see my face, I can see through it to the lamp. It's not worsted wool, but it's not horrible. I don't see any significant issues. Like I said, it's not as smooth as some other polyester I've felt, but it's a little bit lighter weight and a similar texture to this. Except this one, again, promises to be wool when I know there's no way it's 100% wool. Again, I haven't taken out the basting stitch, so I don't know if there's any surgery going on in here where they've stitched two bits of a bolt together or whatever. Sometimes you find that. Sometimes you don't. Usually, if you have 20 pleats or whatever, it'll be pretty well camouflaged. There's some kind of stitches going on where the pleats overlap, but that doesn't seem to be running down the length of the inside of the, what do you call this, the fell, or is the other thing the fell? I don't know. Somebody will correct me if anybody ever actually watches 20 minutes of this. Anyway, okay, so like I said, with a minor adjustment, this kilt seems okay for the price. No real complaints. Like I said, if you don't like a hem, you're going to have to spend more than $70 if you want a better quality fabric. Again, you can get the fused fabric with this. You have a much higher range of tartans with this. But if you're afraid that it might have too much wool, you're kind of limited. So yeah, I had written on here, I didn't write them all down, but I saw there was 9 tartans. One of them was a Celtic pride or heritage or whatever one I had before in the other UT Kilts fabric, and that kilt was too big and I sold it, and then they never offered it again. So maybe I'll get it again in this material now that I know that I can. So I didn't, yeah, like I said, I didn't list all of them, but Black Watch, Ancient Campbell, which is light Black Watch, Black Stewart, and then McPherson they were offering instead of Red Stewart or Royal Stewart, and Scottish National, which is Black Watch with like a red and white, so similar to this white stripe kind of thing. There's it's pretty much Black Watch with an accent. And then a Welsh one, which has a stripe look to it, a vertical stripe more than the horizontal grid of the typical Scottish tartan. And there was another couple, Gordon Hunting or something. 7. I forget what the other couple were. Anyway, so doesn't matter. You can look it up if you're that interested, or if you all buy the Celtic Nations one or whatever it was called before I get to it. So the updated chart, then we have at the top again, not necessarily a one-to-one comparison with all of these, but we have UT Kilts, Highland Redstone taking the number 2 spot for now, Scottish Kilt Company still in at number 3, Kilt Emporium being again a hit or miss fit and a fairly low quality fabric, but a better overall quality fabric than Tartanista, but Tartanista having less hit or mid issues with the fit. All Safe being only ranked above American Highlander because of price, because American Highlander again being better fit, better this, that, better that, but the price just at the time being totally ridiculous, 3 times more than you should pay for that quality of a kilt. And they might not even be in business anymore, whereas I'm pretty sure the rest of these are in business. And AAR, again, which I don't think I've ever had any of their kilts, but I've seen some of their fabric and I was unimpressed, and don't know if those kilts that I have that I got off eBay were either from possibly AAR, but more likely from Scottish Kilt Company, actually. So, and I still have one of those here that I actually, again, it doesn't feel anything like real wool or even this kind of stuff. It has a totally different feel, but it's a comfortable, cheap kilt to wear. So whoever made it did a pretty good job making a cheap kilt for the $30 or $50 or whatever I spent. So that's about the size and scope of today's exploration, I think. So once again, if there's any questions, leave them in the comments and we'll see how it goes.